Hi everyone, welcome to my podcast.
Hey.
I'm Kira. I've got a very special person joining me today.
Hi guys, I'm Tatiana.
You're gonna tell them your very many titles.
Yeah, titles is much. I'm Tatiana. I'm a makeup artist, content creator. I actually started content creating when did I start? 2 years ago. Started makeup, I would say 8 years ago now. And I am an events coordinator. Started that this year. Yeah.
Wow. So much.
Oh my gosh.
The grace is heavy.
Oh gosh.
But before we even start getting into all the questions that I have for you, I even want to speak about how we even got here. Like, why is it that Tatiana is here sitting next to me and you're the first guest that I have on my podcast? And I remember I came to you and I was like, Tatiana, I need help. And originally it was supposed to be a clothing brand, right? But a few weeks later it shifted and it turned into this whole podcast, this whole platform that I'm trying to build. And I remember you saying to me, like, this actually makes more sense for me because what is on your heart is essentially community. So I guess even you being here in this position, like, how do you feel that God has really led it or been involved?
I love it. And first of all, I'm honored to even be here. But even when you told me about the idea, I think it's so beautiful because God knows us more than we know ourselves sometimes. And I remember you being at first, you was like, I'm nervous, I don't know what to talk about, etc., etc. But I told you, like, you're a natural yapper. And it's like, you remind me a little bit of me in that sense, where it's like, you can actually cultivate like good conversations with people. And I think the beautiful thing about building this platform is, I found for me that conversations have been very healing. So sometimes people do need that safe space where they can relate to someone and be like, oh my gosh, yeah. So like, especially with you touching on creatives, a lot of people look at people that are creatives and assume that their life is perfect or assume that they don't have fears. But then you opening up this space shows them like, okay, people are actually normal people. They have fears, but they're still doing it. So I'm honored to be here and I'm grateful. Yeah.
No, I'm glad. I'm glad. And even like you said, like one of my main aims is really just for people to see the realness behind being a creative and really using your gift, like to really get rid of those ideas that social media really brings, that everyone is perfect and that the fact that they're in this position now, they just got there overnight, because it's literally never like that. It's always a journey. It's always a process. And I think one of the things I really want to get into when I was praying about this video, praying about my interaction with you, is your boldness. I think for me, seeing you, I guess even on social media, but even in person, being around you, your interactions with people, like everything you do, it's just bold. Like it just seems so natural. And I just want to ask, is this something that you've always had? Like, have you always been a bold person from when you were young? Or is it something that you've had to, I guess, push yourself out there to become?
It's funny because I would say I've always been extroverted, but that would mainly be with friends. So before, when I was younger, when it came to people that I didn't know, I promise you I wouldn't speak at all. Let alone to girls, to guys, just I don't even want to hear it. But I would say from sixth form, that's when I saw like the peak of like my anxiety. Like I didn't know how to talk to people that weren't my friends. When it came to being in like big social settings, I would just be in the corner. But it's funny because now when it came to getting older, how I would hide that was with alcohol. So like when I would drink, I would become bold, I would become this. And I thought, okay, I'm confident now. But then I remember after I gave my life to Christ, the first like the first birthday I didn't drink alcohol, I realized, oh my gosh, I actually can't talk to people. So I think that was the first time it was kind of highlighted to me, the first time I brought it to God. But when it comes to boldness about things, I promise you guys, half of the things, everything I do it scared. And I had to get rid of that thought that I'm going to overcome fear, then I'm going to do it. I remember it was even in Joshua chapter 1, the amount of times God told Joshua to be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous. And there was one time I even searched up the meaning of like what courage is. And courage is literally to do the thing that you're scared of. So I think it's beautiful because even when I do things I'm scared of, I know that I'm not doing it because I want to do it. I want to be on social media. I want to do events, but I'm literally doing it out of obedience. So when it comes to boldness, when it comes to just even being around people, I think another thing as well is I've seen how much it helps other people. There's times where my social battery is low. There's times where I feel like I can't hold a conversation. But even being a makeup artist with new people coming into my seat day in, day out, you're forced to learn how to create a conversation. There's clients that come in, they're mute. There's other clients that come in, they have everything to say. But he's made me learn how to have that just people, not people pleasing. He's taught me how to cultivate conversations. So I think from that, I've been trained behind the scenes. So now when people see me do it so naturally, it's not naturally, but he's forced me to be uncomfortable. That's why I'm able to be uncomfortable. So like boldly. So yeah.
That's really good. I think as well, because you mentioned that before, for you to be bold, you had to essentially rely on alcohol.
Yeah.
And so,
mine was tequila.
Wow.
Yeah.
Specific.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah. Hallelujah.
But even leading on from that, I guess boldness in the world, it looks a lot different to being bold for Christ. Like, I guess you've been in a position where you've done both. How is it different? Like, what is it, being bold now for Christ, what is it that you kind of gain more?
I will tell any and every, being actually bold for Christ is terrifying.
Yeah.
Being bold for Christ means that you are against a lot of what's going on in like mainstream media, especially with me being an influencer. The way I grew my platform wasn't necessarily with Christ, but the way I grew my platform was with makeup, but also like the times I'd go out, you know, you'd be doing vlogging with certain things, you'd be dressed in certain ways. So now to even do that switch, it took a lot for me to first even post me like walking in my faith, because first I had to get over the fear that I was going to like leave God, the fear that I was going to fail, because now it's like, okay, you've started this walk, but do you have what it takes to sustain? But that's before he taught me that he's my sustainer. But I also had to get grips of, and I'll be very transparent, I know there's topics I'm even called to speak on that I'm terrified to speak on. Now when you talk about how you grew up dressing in a promiscuous way, now you're being called to call out things like the radical feminism. Now you're being called to call out so many other things. You know that you'll be persecuted. And he told me, I think he told me 1 year into my walk, like, you will be persecuted. And I haven't experienced any persecution. But for some people, because they fear persecution so much, they will never actually be bold. So I feel like real boldness comes from standing on what God calls you to stand on. But a lot of us, I think even me, we actually don't do that. So when we see other people, it's like, oh, it's cute, you know, do what you do. Sometimes just look like the world is fine. But no, you're actually called to be set apart. Set apart doesn't mean that you just have no personality and you're none, but stand on your business. Defend the gospel, defend the faith. So yeah, it's really hard, so hard. What's another thing I want to touch on? And you asked, how is it different from being in the world?
Yeah.
I would say boldness in the world, I think it comes like you have that safety net of like you're following the crowd so you won't get persecuted. You're seeing a bunch of other people doing exactly what you want to do, so it's easy to just follow suit. Whereas following Christ is literally going away from what everyone is doing and standing firm on that. So yeah, interesting. Very interesting.
I hear what you're saying, because I feel like even, I don't know, I can't remember when it was, the past few weeks, a week or so ago, I remember I was in a position where I was just so overwhelmed with everything that I was doing and just life, really. And I just kind of wanted to be normal. Like, I just wanted to live an ordinary life and just not do anything.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes some of the things that is scary when you grow and build a relationship with God, it's scary because that's when he starts to ask you to do things.
Yeah.
And has there ever been a point where you kind of wanted to run from God because you knew that, okay, I'm taking this next step with my relationship with him. Now I know he's going to ask me to do this, or there is something that's on the back of my mind that I know he's wanting me to do, but I don't want to, so I'm going to run from him.
Yeah. I would say it's so funny because it hasn't been things like posting on social media. It hasn't been things like hosting an event. I think the scariest thing that I've had to do this year was mentoring. And I ran away from mentoring for so long. I think half of the reason why I didn't even do events consistently last year was the fact that now you're entrusted with a flock to lead. And of course they're following Christ as well, but essentially like follow me as I follow Christ. And that was terrifying. And I remember I was okay with just being like, oh, you know, I just want to be discipled for like 10 years. But God basically had to tell me like, no, I've been in a position where I've been poured in from my leaders in my church. But now it's the step where I'm like, okay, you actually need to steward people. So now when people start to come to me with certain questions, I'm just like, I'm just a girl. Why are you coming to me? And I remember telling God, I remember going and trying to justify all of my fears to God. But then he looked at me and he said like, similar to Moses, like, who put the words in your mouth? But I've just had to be very transparent with people. And I think I've learned one thing that he's taught me is dependency and not perfection. Because now when you think about, okay, you need to be perfect, you don't give yourself any room for error. But now when you're transparent with yourself and you're transparent with other people, that your role is to be dependent on people, not dependent on people, your role is to be dependent on God. You have not necessarily freedom to make mistakes, but they know that you're not perfect. And it's in that imperfection that they can even look to Christ as well, because it's like, don't look to get all of your answers from me. But even on the back of that, there's been some, you know, when you're walking in the way of the Lord, you'll get turbulences. So there's warfare that's happened. I remember even being consistent with me and my sister hosting an event, and me speaking more and pouring more into like the youth ministry that I'm in. There was a season of my life, I promise you, week after week, my mum was in hospital, ICU unit, Aurelia was in hospital, which is my sister. You're hearing deaths in the family, you're hearing this, you're hearing that. And at that point, I just looked at God and I said, what do you want me to do again? And it can be so easy to get overwhelmed with the grief that you feel, and all of the like pressures that you're feeling, because now you're in a position where you're still pouring into others, but you're still getting like kids. But what I've learned is to lean on God like never before. And in the season where he's taught me yieldedness, it's been beautiful, because I know that even where I'm going, where there's even more eyes on me, you need that yieldedness to God, because if you don't have that, you will be fleeting. You'll be pushed side to side. So now when I'm even thinking about, oh my gosh, there's going to be like thousands of people that can have opinions on me. There's going to be thousands of people that probably don't like me. There's going to be bare people that probably tell me that my faith is dumb and I'm in a cult and I'm this and I'm that. Because he's taught me to lean on him like never before, that's built a foundation for my faith. So now I can go in a position where I'm persecuted, I can be like, okay, he really is my sustainer. So it's been hard, but one thing that gets me through every single time will be the gospel. It will be the love of Christ. I was even thinking about this morning. It will never be ministry that keeps you going. It will never be the accolades that keeps you going. It will never be what you can get from it that keeps you going. Because when the time gets tough, that it just won't be enough. But it's always the love of Christ that soothes me. It's the love of Christ that keeps me going, because I'm like, this is my friend. And I've seen the love of him in my life. I've seen the blessing, not even necessarily the blessing that is him in my life. And because of that, I will continue to do the things that I need to do to advance the gospel. So even when I think of mentoring now, I'm thinking, okay, you're not just pouring into people, but these are people, a lot of the people that are like drawn to me or I'm drawn to are in the creative spaces, are speakers, are artistic. So I'm thinking of, okay, they're being built in the faith. So now they can go and advance the gospel even more. And it's just that kingdom mindset. And just, yeah, that keeps me going. So, yeah.
That's really, really good. You mentioned how ministry is never going to be something that keeps you going, like with the praise from other people and things like that. So for people who, I guess, essentially have a gift or something that they want to start using to glorify God, what would you say, how would you say you are able to recognize that what you're doing is truly for the Lord and rather than for yourself?
I think question everything, like question why you're doing anything. I remember even before my event, Right at the Vision as a concept is beautiful. But one thing my friend, even Bien done, he called me, we were on the phone for like an hour. He was like, okay, why are you doing it? And I feel like sometimes we're scared to ask ourselves those kind of questions because we think, oh my gosh, I'm doing it for the wrong reason, da 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 da. But even when you have glimpses of like, okay, maybe I didn't do this with the complete right heart. It doesn't necessarily mean that God will strip everything away, but it's like, okay, how do you constantly ensure that your heart is focused on what he's doing? So even when it comes to my gifts, it's a daily thing. It's like, okay, inviting God into me doing makeup, inviting God into me doing an event. I'm like, okay, God, who are the speakers that you want on that event? Okay, God, a client is coming to my chair. What do you want me to tell her? How do I encourage her? So I don't necessarily think it always has to be something that screams like the traditional ministry, because some people can even think like, okay, how is makeup a ministry? But it's like you're serving the client that's coming to your chair. So I think having that heart of service, bringing and inviting God into your craft will essentially like set you apart from other people who are doing this thing. But also, I think even with speaking throughout this year, God told me to sit down for a bit. And it's funny because the end of last year, I was praying for like mentorship and discipleship and this, that. And he started to show me why those things are essential. But now when it comes to the point where he's telling you take a break, I think for a lot of people, it highlights how much they idolize it. So now when it even came for him to tell me to sit down, me being able to sit down by the grace and grace of God alone, but me being able to sit down, it highlighted to me, oh my gosh, it really is for him. And even throughout this year, people kept on telling me like post content. I promise you, I didn't have the desire to do it at all. I didn't have the desire to be on a platform. I didn't have the desire to speak. But I love that because it showed me that now when I get into a place where I'm creating content, although, yes, I enjoy it, I promise you I can go without. So now when you see me on certain platforms and you see me posting on content, just know it's for him. But he had to strip every single ambition that I had. So now he can actually filter what I do and that it will be for his glory. So, yeah.
Do you think that wealth is a reason to start something? Like you're doing this thing specifically because you want to gain wealth? Because I know some people say that, oh, money isn't everything. You can't be doing something just for money because that means it's not for Christ. But do you think wealth specifically is a bad reason to start? Because as much as you want to be doing things for the Lord, at the same time, you want to be in a good position, right?
I think there's a way to gain wealth and be impactful at the same time. I don't think the two are like separate all the time. So, for example, there's people that... I remember watching a movie. What movie was I watching? What was it? I forgot her name. But in this movie, there was basically a businessman and he sold gym goods to bigger companies. And from that, he obviously gained a lot of wealth. But what he would do with some of the wealth was give it to organizations that are like missionaries in it. So when he started the company, of course, he started with the intention of wealth. But I think if your only intention to building is wealth, I don't think it will sustain you very far. Only because it's very easy to compromise if your only agenda is wealth. But if your agenda is, okay, God, I'm partnering with you in this business, how do you want me to go about it? You can build wealth, but you can also use the resources the way he wants you to use the resources. I think it's with any resource. Like, we have the ability to communicate well. I can have that ability and just be talking dumbness. And it can be very convincing because I have that ability. But me inviting him into that, he's able to use it for his good. So I don't think money's a bad thing. I don't think we're all called to just be living on 1 pence a day. Because really and truly, when it comes to things like missionary, when it comes to things like putting on events, it costs money. But I don't think that's the only thing. And I think even the person's character behind that is very important, because even in the movie, the guy he had a burden to disciple. So it wasn't just him pouring everything into the business, but he had people that he was building up. He had love for his family. He had love for the community. So although he was creating wealth and building that wealth, you can see that the character's traits were still of Christ. So even with me, when it comes to doing the different things that I'm doing, it's not necessarily that I have to be the face of everything to assist to that. But I'm pouring into people that are around me that are also called to create wealth. I'm even being taught by one of my mentors. She sent me a long video of what to do with wealth. So with this person, what he does is he invests into people that are doing great things. So people like you, people like me that are actually doing these things, that's what he would invest his money into. So it's okay, now when you've created wealth, how do you steward that wealth? I think needs to be taught, rather than just demonizing money as a whole, and demonizing any person that has money. Because at the end of the day, we live on earth and things cost money. So
exactly, I agree. And I think sometimes that could be a hindrance for people starting things or getting into a creative industry or space, because obviously, aside from wanting to use their gift, realistically, you also do want to make money. And I think sometimes we can say as a body, as a believers, that if what you're doing is just for money, then it is wrong. And I think that's been put into our minds so much sometimes, that if you even have that desire for money, then don't do what it is that you're doing. And it can be quite off-putting, and I think it makes it more scary. And I was doing mentorship before I started this, before I was launching this. I was doing mentorship with Nashada, and she was really getting into my why, what is my reason behind what I'm doing, why I'm launching this. And like you said, it has to be for something greater than wealth, because when challenges are coming, you need to be able to go back to your vision. You need to be able to go back to what the Lord is saying to you, because that is what is going to sustain you, like you said.
And even with the vision, one instruction God has told me was, be careful with who invests into this. And I've had opportunities for people to pour money into this. But again, if your main desire to build in an organization is wealth, you'll take anything from anywhere. You won't have the discernment to be okay, should I actually work with this person? There's been platforms where I've had to say no, because God gave me a vision whilst I was praying, and that's it. That's all I had to run on. But if your mentality is wealth, you will misguard every single thing that he's trying to say, and you'll just be okay, let me just do it. So I think it's really good.
And people say not every good opportunity is a good opportunity.
Exactly.
I've said a lot of times, but like you said, if wealth is your motive, then every good opportunity you see, you're going to think it's from the Lord, because obviously it's blessing you. So why would God not give me that type of thing?
With that, sorry, I cut you off again, just so bad. But I think one thing he even dealt with me in this year was the scarcity mindset. You can't say no if you don't think the Lord has got your back. So even when it comes to God being Jehovah Jireh, if he's getting you to say no to one opportunity, do you genuinely believe that he'll open up another door? Or if you've noticed that your heart isn't in the mind, the correct posture, you have to know God as a merciful God, because if you don't understand that God is merciful, you'll feel like he's completely writing you off. But the Bible says that there's nothing that can depart us from the love of Jesus Christ. So I think even with certain things like that, people don't like to address themselves or actually ask themselves questions, because they feel like God will have such a harsh response to them. But it's like, no, he genuinely wants to be a teacher. He genuinely wants to father you in the different things that you're doing. So yeah,
that's good. And with saying no to things that you obviously wanted to do at times, like, how has that been? Has there ever been a situation which you should have said no, but you actually said yes? And what was the consequence, if there was one?
It's great. Okay, can I say this? Hold on. Okay. Oh, it's so hard, because sometimes like he gives me nothing but just no. And I remember there was someone that I met very early on after I like came out of university. They were doing like everything I wanted to do in terms of like creative entrepreneurship. And I remember being like with them one day, and I went home and I was praying, and I just got a vision that was just a bit, don't know. And so I just pulled back from them for a bit. But I was still kind of there, in and out. But I remember there was an event that they wanted to host, and they called me and they were like, oh, we would love for you to be down. This would be the funds, would be covered, great opportunity, etc., etc. I was saying yes. I was like, yeah, I'm free. Like, I'm down. Out of the Lord's mercy and the Lord's mercy alone, I wasn't available that day. Come to find out, one of the things that I don't like about the industry I'm in is that, very frankly, witchcraft has become, glorified. And they put it under like wellness and healing and this and that. That event contained so many things that I just would have bugged out at. But I thank God that the Lord was merciful, because although things like sound healing irritate me, tarot cards irritate me, I didn't yet have the language as to why it's wrong and how to communicate it with wisdom. So if I went, I just would have just done but that was a circumstance where I said yes before actually inquiring God, do you want me in that place? Although it seems like everything that I'm supposed to be doing, and although there's actually money in there, do you actually want me there? But that was the Lord's mercy that kept me from that, because I would have said yes and gone with myself.
Who knows?
Who
knows what would have happened?
Literally. And with things like that, it's just, oh, child, I don't like it. This ghetto. It's yeah.
We thank God.
We do.
We thank God.
We do.
But even with everything that you said as well, though, you've mentioned, even as we're speaking, you mentioned all the different areas, and like you did at the beginning, that you're involved in. You even mentioned mentoring as well. Like, all of these things that you're doing, how did you know that that was what you're called to do? Like, how did you know you should be doing this? Because you went to uni, you studied, it was sociology, right? And then coming out of uni and just doing nothing in relation to what you studied, what you went to uni for. How did you like figure that out?
I think it's even one thing that I encourage you with, not trying to get everything right at the same time. And I think that was one thing that was very frustrating to me, because when I came out of university, I assumed to know my next 10 years because I was walking with God. But sometimes he would just give you one step. But honestly, day by day obedience. And I found that even as I've yielded to using my gifts in one area, he'll open a door. So I remember going to my mentor, and I was like, my leader, and I was like, oh, I would love to help you with content. From that, a gift spot, like just God, it just clicked in my head. I was like, oh my gosh, you would be good at asking questions. When it comes to mentoring, it's something that he even gave me whilst I was praying. Like, I just kept on getting the feeling, let me mentor. So that happened. With events, it was me and my friend going to a cafe, we was talking, And then that's when, okay, Right Out the Vision came out.
Really?
But I've just learned not to try and understand everything all at once. And even more importantly than that, though, I've learned that even when you see something, allow the Lord to change it. I remember with Right Out the Vision, the first like prayer call I had, I knew what was going to happen. I knew da. So now when people would question me or be like, oh, maybe this, maybe that, I would be so defensive. But it wasn't because I was scared to see what they were saying. I had a fear of, did God really tell me that? And I think that's the bit, like, that's a lot of fear. A lot of the time, like, that's the fear that people don't realize that they had, because they see the Lord changing a plan, or it's not going exactly how they thought it would go. They'll be like, oh my gosh, maybe I heard God wrong. Let me not do anything. But yeah, I've just learned to just be with him step by step, and understanding that he who starts a thing will see it to completion. I've also learned that if he sees you as a faithful steward of small, he will give you more. And that's not my goal to have more. But I've gone to God countless times and I've just been like, God, whatever you want me to do, I'm not going to box you in. And I feel like if people get to that place where they say to God, okay, God, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it, they will actually see that they have so many gifts inside of them that they don't even realize. Did I see myself as a mentor? No. But clearly he did. And now we are here. But that's same with everything. Same with makeup. Same with events. But you need to be in a position as well where you're not fearful of what other people have to say. Because I think fear of perception is what stops a lot of people back. It was even, I made a video about that last year. I was like, fear of perception and bringing out an event, it doesn't make sense to me. It probably won't make sense to a lot of people, but I'm doing it. And I've seen that how that's even helped other people and encourage other people that you can do something different. But it's just about following God and what he says. So, yeah.
That's good. I think even going off that, one of the things I think God even spoke to me about, was it a couple months ago, is that I need to stop limiting God to things that only I can perceive myself. And in my mind, me doing this podcast and speaking, it literally it doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would you ask me to do such a thing? But I think that's something that's just so beautiful about God. He sees so much further than we do. His vision is so much greater. So everything that I think I know about myself, God is like, well,
exactly,
there's a lot more inside. And it's just, I think it's just such a nice journey to be going on. It's a scary journey, definitely, but it's just such a nice feeling having knowing a God who knows everything.
Exactly. I think even with the makeup appointment, even with the makeup event that we done, that was very tough. That included outreach that I've never done, working with brands that I've never done. We worked with really good brands like MAC, ELF. I would just be thinking, how did we get here? You need to have a marketing degree, you need to do this, you need to do that. But I remember there was one time, this was when I was really overwhelmed, and I was reading Acts where it just talks about Moses and how he constantly went to God. And in that moment, it clicked, and he just reminded me, like, although like sermons and preachers use Moses to kind of depict us pioneering, Moses was never really the pioneer, he was just a follower. And I've grown comfortable in being that role. I'm actually just dependent on the one who, like you said, who sees all. So you don't need to have this overwhelming like baggage on your back where you think I'm carrying it all. You're just seeing and doing. Like, that's literally it.
I agree. I think really with God, you actually just have to be flexible. You can't limit things, or you can't have a fixed idea of what things will look like, because I think that's when you just get disappointed, because it's like, okay, I thought this was going to look this way, but it didn't. Where did I go wrong? And I think even when I mentioned in the beginning how I originally wanted it to be a clothing brand, but it kind of switched. One of the thoughts I was having is, okay, well, did I hear God wrong? All these months that I've been planning, like, was it incorrect? Because why is it now that you're switching everything? Where did I go wrong? But I think if God had revealed to me from the beginning that this is what I wanted you to do, I wouldn't have been obedient because I wasn't ready to receive that. I wasn't ready to go forward with such a thing because this is bigger than what I even imagined. So I think even the way God reveals things to us, reveals certain gifts, he does it little by little in a way that we are able to take it in. Essentially, he starts with baby food. He starts with baby milk before we're ready for the solid.
Exactly.
And I think it just speaks to how much God knows us individually and uniquely.
Exactly.
And I just have one more question to ask before we round up. And the question is for anyone who has a gift that they're aware of, or everyone has a gift, how would you encourage them to walk in boldness and to actually start using it?
Oh, I'm saying this to you. I'm saying this. Yeah, that's so good. One thing about me is the word is my food. So what the word says, although I might not feel like it, I shall do it. And it's 1 Peter chapter 4 verse 10, and it calls us to use the gifts that we have to serve others. So you literally have to do that. And I think one fear of mine was, imagine getting to the end of your life and you realize you were supposed to do this and every single thing, but you never actually done it because of fear. It essentially comes down to fear. But I would say be bold and courageous. Courage looks like doing the thing that you're fearful of. So do the exact thing that you're fearful of. Sometimes that can look like leaning on a friend and having an accountability partner. Sometimes that can just look like you doing it by yourself. But use your gifts. What else? I think that's what the child
just do it.
And I think even with this, like, I remember, sorry, just quick.
No, fine,
I remember there was one time I was praying away fear. And then it got to
what?
Praying away fear. Sorry.
Praying away fear.
I was praying away fear. And then he told me so beautifully, he was like, you want to be in bondage to fear because it gave you an excuse not to go. So it's like, people can hear this. You can love it. It can be like, oh yeah, I'm going to start tomorrow. But if you get to tomorrow and you don't start it, you're still in the same position. So it's like, I can be like, oh yeah, use your gifts, but you essentially just need to do it. Like, no one's holding you back. I promise you, if you think that it's resources that are holding you back, you don't want it enough. Even when it comes to the podcast, you're probably thinking, studio time, oh my gosh, people. But you just had to say yes and the rest followed. So know the person that's sending you out, which is God. It should be God. And be, like, stand firm in the fact that if he's sending you out, that he will take care of everything that needs to be taken care of. So yeah.
That is so good. That is so good. Thank you so much, Tatiana, for being here with me.
Thank you for having me.
It's been an honor having this conversation with you. I loved it. I feel like there was so much more we could have really gotten into, but we'll leave it here for now. But yeah.
Thank you guys for having me. Like, comment, and subscribe.
Amen. Yes. Be doing that. Like, comment, and share. Be sharing as well to your people, to the people who think need the encouragement that Tatiana brought today, because we know there's people who need it. But yeah, guys, until next time.
Bye.